The neon sign flickered outside Murphy's bar, red letters bleeding into the darkness of downtown Portland. It was past midnight, but the place was still alive with the kind of energy that only comes from cheap whiskey and cheaper conversation. Staff Sergeant Jack Morrison pushed through the heavy wooden door, his desert combat boots silent against the worn floor. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since he'd stepped off the transport plane from Kabul. 3 weeks since he'd traded the scorching Afghan sun for the perpetual gray of Oregon rain. He still felt out of place in civilian clothes. The jeans felt wrong. The plain black t-shirt felt naked without patches, without purpose. But the nightmares felt the same. Jack made his way to the far end of the bar, away from the crowd of college kids and office workers blowing off steam. He needed space, needed quiet, needed something to drown out the sound of IEDs that still echoed in his head. What'll it be? The bartender was young, maybe 25, with sleeve tattoos and a bored expression. Whiskey. Make it a double. The amber liquid burned going down, but not as much as the memories. Jack closed his eyes and tried to push away the image of Rodriguez. 22 years old. Kid from Texas who collected comic books and sent half his pay home to his mama. Rodriguez wasn't coming home. Neither was Chun, or Thompson, or Martinez. 15 good soldiers under Jack's command. Only 12 made it back. You look like you need another. Jack opened his eyes. A woman had slid onto the stool next to him. Blonde hair, red dress, the kind of smile that spelled trouble. He'd seen plenty like her in bars from Kandahar to Kansas City. I'm good, he said, turning back to his drink. Come on, soldier boy. Don't be antisocial. She leaned closer, her perfume mixing with the smell of cigarettes and spilled beer. I can tell you've got stories. Jack's jaw tightened. I'm not looking for company. Everyone's looking for company. Especially guys like you, coming back from over there all messed up in the head. The glass in Jack's hand stopped halfway to his lips. Excuse me. You heard me. PTSD, right? That's what you boys call it now. Used to be shell shock, back when men were men. The bar seemed to quiet around them. Jack set his glass down carefully, each movement deliberate and controlled. Lady, you should walk away. Now. But she didn't. Instead, she laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the ambient noise. Or what? You'll snap and hurt an innocent woman? Prove everyone right about you soldier boys being ticking time bombs. Jack stood slowly. His hands were steady, but inside, something was breaking apart. The careful control he'd maintained for 3 weeks was cracking like ice under pressure. Last warning. That's when her boyfriend showed up. 6'2", 250 pounds of beer gut and bad attitude. He had 2 friends with him, both equally drunk and equally stupid. This military reject bothering you, babe? The big man stepped close enough that Jack could smell the alcohol on his breath. He was just leaving, the woman said with a smirk. Jack looked at the 3 men blocking his path to the door. In another life, in another country, this would have been simple, quick, efficient. But this wasn't Afghanistan. These weren't enemy combatants. They were just drunk idiots who didn't know when to quit. I don't want any trouble, Jack said quietly. Too bad. The boyfriend shoved him hard in the chest. Trouble found you anyway. Jack absorbed the push without moving. His training kicked in automatically. Assess threats, identify exits, calculate odds. 3 civilians, heavily intoxicated, no visible weapons. This could end badly for everyone involved. Walk away, Jack said. All of you, while you still can. The second friend, a wiry guy with prison tattoos, pulled out his phone and started recording. This is gonna be good. Crazy vet having a breakdown. Yeah, the third one chimed in. Just like on the news. These guys come back all broken and shit. Something inside Jack snapped. Not the careful control that held, but something deeper. Something that had been building since the day he watched Rodriguez bleed out in the sand while he held pressure on a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. The boyfriend threw the first real punch. Jack slipped it easily, caught the man's wrist, and used his momentum to send him face first into the bar. The crack of breaking nose echoed over the suddenly silent room. The wiry friend dropped his phone and charged. Jack sidestepped, caught him in a chokehold, and put him to sleep in 3 seconds. The man dropped like a stone. The third attacker pulled a knife. That changed everything. Jack's training took over completely. Muscle memory from 100 close-quarters combat drills. He disarmed the man, broke his wrist, and put him on the ground so fast that most of the bar patrons missed exactly how it happened. 3 men down in less than 15 seconds. Jack stood over them, breathing steady, not even winded. That's when the sirens started. By the time the police arrived, the bar had erupted into chaos. The girlfriend was screaming about assault. The boyfriend was bleeding and demanding arrests. Witnesses were shouting conflicting stories. Jack sat calmly on his bar stool, hands visible, waiting. "Sir, you need to come with us," the first officer said, hand on his weapon. Jack nodded and stood slowly. "I understand." They cuffed him right there in front of everyone. Perp walked through the crowd of gawkers, their phones out, recording his humiliation. Jack kept his eyes forward, his expression neutral. He'd been arrested before. Occupational hazard when you spent your teenage years angry at the world. But that was a long time ago, before the army straightened him out, before he learned what honor meant. Now he was right back where he started. The Portland Police Bureau downtown station hadn't changed much since Jack's last visit 15 years ago. Same flickering fluorescent lights. Same stale coffee smell. Same attitude from the desk sergeant who looked at him like he was already guilty. They put him in interview room 2. Gray walls, metal table, uncomfortable chairs. Jack sat perfectly still, hands folded, staring at the one-way mirror. Detective Ray Sullivan walked in 20 minutes later. 50-something, gut hanging over his belt, the look of a man who'd seen too much and cared too little. Jack Morrison, Sullivan read from a file. 34 years old. Army Staff Sergeant. Just back from Afghanistan. He looked up with cold eyes. And apparently can't handle civilian life. Jack said nothing. 3 men in the hospital. One with a broken nose, one with a concussion, one with a shattered wrist. All because you couldn't control your temper. Is that a question? Jack asked quietly. Sullivan slammed the file on the table. Don't get smart with me, soldier boy. I've dealt with plenty of your type. Come home from the war all messed up. Can't adjust. Take it out on innocent people. Innocent. Those men didn't deserve what you did to them. Jack leaned forward slightly. Those men attacked me. I defended myself. Right? 3 against 1, and somehow you're the victim. Sullivan laughed harshly. You know what I think? I think you went looking for a fight. PTSD case like you. Probably been planning something like this for weeks. The words hit Jack like physical blows. He'd heard them before, from his own father, from friends who'd grown distant after he enlisted, from strangers who saw the uniform and made assumptions. I think, Sullivan continued, you're exactly the kind of unstable veteran that gives the rest a bad name. Mental case with military training. Dangerous combination. Jack's hands clenched involuntarily. The detective noticed. What's wrong, Morrison? Truth hurt? You gonna snap and attack me too? Detective Sullivan. Another voice from the doorway. A younger cop, maybe 30, with sergeant stripes. Captain wants to see you. Now. Sullivan looked annoyed. We're in the middle of. Now. The sergeant repeated firmly. After Sullivan left, the sergeant stepped inside and closed the door. His name tag read Martinez. You okay? Martinez asked. Jack studied him carefully. Should I be? My brother served in Afghanistan. 3rd Infantry. He told me about guys like Sullivan. Civilians who think they know what war is like. Jack said nothing, but something in his posture relaxed slightly. For what it's worth, Martinez continued. I saw the bar security footage. Those guys started it. You finished it. The door opened again. This time it was Sullivan with Captain Ellen Hayes, a hard-looking woman in her 40s. Mr. Morrison, she said, sitting across from him. I apologize for Detective Sullivan's approach. We've reviewed the security footage from the bar. Sullivan's face went red. Captain, this man is clearly defending himself on video. Hayes cut him off. 3 intoxicated men attacking 1 sober individual. Textbook self-defense. Jack felt a small weight lift from his chest. However, Hayes continued, there are still questions about the level of force used. You put 3 men in the hospital using what appears to be professional-level combat training. Before Jack could respond, there was a knock on the door. A uniformed officer stuck his head in. Captain, there's someone here to see the suspect. Says he's from the Pentagon. Hayes frowned. The Pentagon? Jack's stomach dropped. This was either very good news or very bad news. In his experience with military bureaucracy, it was usually the latter. The man who walked into interview room 2 looked like he'd stepped out of a recruitment poster. Tall, lean, perfectly pressed uniform with enough ribbons to open a craft store. Colonel rank insignia gleamed on his shoulders. Staff Sergeant Morrison, he said with a slight smile. Colonel James Patterson, Pentagon Military Liaison Office. Jack stood automatically and snapped to attention. Sir. At ease, soldier. Patterson turned to the police officers. I need to speak with Sergeant Morrison privately. Captain Hayes looked skeptical. This is a criminal investigation. Patterson pulled out his phone and showed her something on the screen. Hayes' expression changed immediately. Of course. Take all the time you need. After the police left, Patterson sat down across from Jack. You know why I'm here, Sergeant? No, sir. 3 weeks ago, your convoy was ambushed outside Kandahar. IED followed by small arms fire. Your vehicle was disabled, 3 of your men were wounded, and you were cut off from support. Jack's throat tightened. Yes, sir. According to the after-action report, you carried 2 wounded soldiers 300 meters through active fire to reach the evacuation zone. Then you went back for the 3rd. Rodriguez was still alive, sir. I couldn't leave him. Private Rodriguez died in the helicopter. But he lived long enough to see his daughter's face on video call because you refused to give up on him. Jack looked down at his hands. They were shaking now. The entire engagement was recorded by drone surveillance. What you did out there, that was the most extraordinary act of courage I've witnessed in 25 years of service. Patterson reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small blue box. The president wanted to present this personally, but you disappeared before we could arrange the ceremony. Staff Sergeant Jack Morrison, by order of the President of the United States and with the recommendation of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you are hereby awarded the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Jack stared at the box. Inside was America's highest military decoration, the medal his grandfather had earned at Normandy, the medal that fewer than 3,500 people in history had received. Sir, I don't understand. Why here? Why now? Patterson's expression grew serious. Because someone posted video of your arrest online. It's gone viral. Medal of Honor recipient arrested in bar fight. The Pentagon's crisis management team is having a field day. Jack felt sick. Sir, I never wanted. Son, you saved 12 men's lives in Afghanistan. You carried the wounded through hell itself because that's what honor demands. And now you're sitting in a police station being treated like a common criminal because you defended yourself against 3 drunk bullies. Patterson stood and walked to the one-way mirror. The American people need to see what real heroism looks like. Not the Hollywood version. The real thing. A man who does what's right because it's right, even when it costs him everything. What happens now, sir? Now? Now we remind this country what it means to serve. 20 minutes later, Jack found himself back in the main police station lobby. But something had changed. The desk sergeant who'd processed him earlier was now standing at attention. Other officers had gathered around, their earlier hostility replaced by something that looked like awe. Captain Hayes approached with his personal effects. Mr. Morrison, all charges have been dropped. The district attorney reviewed the case and determined that you acted in clear self-defense. Jack nodded and signed for his wallet and keys. Sir, it was Sergeant Martinez. I wanted to apologize. We should have handled this differently from the start. Before Jack could respond, Detective Sullivan appeared. He looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. Morrison. He stopped in front of Jack, jaw working like he was chewing glass. I owe you an apology. I didn't know. You didn't know what? Jack asked quietly. About what you did over there. About who you are. Jack met his eyes steadily. I'm the same person who walked in here 3 hours ago. The same person you called a mental case and a ticking time bomb. Sullivan flinched. The only thing that changed, Jack continued, is now you know the rest of the story. Outside the police station, Jack found himself facing a wall of reporters and cameras. News vans lined the street. Photographers jostled for position. Colonel Patterson appeared at his elbow. Ready for this? No, sir. Good. The best heroes never are. Patterson stepped to the cluster of microphones that had been set up on the sidewalk. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Staff Sergeant Jack Morrison, United States Army. 3 weeks ago, Sergeant Morrison single-handedly saved the lives of 12 American soldiers in Afghanistan. Today, the President of the United States will award him our nation's highest military honor, the Medal of Honor. The crowd erupted with questions. Patterson raised his hand for silence. Sergeant Morrison will make a brief statement. Jack stepped forward. The cameras focused on him, their red recording lights like tiny eyes. He thought about Rodriguez, about the weight of carrying wounded men through gunfire, about the responsibility that came with surviving when others didn't. 3 weeks ago, I lost 3 soldiers under my command. Good men. Better men than me. They died because I couldn't get them out fast enough. The crowd was silent now. Tonight, I was arrested for defending myself against 3 men who thought veterans like me were broken, unstable, dangerous. Jack looked directly into the nearest camera. Maybe they're right. Maybe war does break us. Maybe we do come home different. But we don't come home lesser. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Every day, men and women in uniform put their lives on the line for people they've never met. They do it because they believe in something bigger than themselves. They do it because they love this country enough to die for it. Jack's voice grew stronger. And when they come home, they deserve better than suspicion. They deserve better than being treated like problems to be managed instead of heroes to be honored. The reporter from Channel 8 raised her hand. Sergeant Morrison, what do you want people to take away from what happened tonight? Jack thought about Rodriguez's daughter, about the video call in the helicopter, about the promise he'd made to a dying soldier. I want them to remember that heroes don't look like movie stars. They look like the guy next to you at the coffee shop, or the woman ahead of you in line at the grocery store, or the old man sitting alone at the bar. He looked out at the crowd of faces, some skeptical, some curious, some beginning to understand. They look like regular people who chose to do something extraordinary when it mattered most. The Medal of Honor ceremony took place 3 days later at the White House. Jack stood at attention in his dress blues as the president placed the medal around his neck. In the audience sat the families of Rodriguez, Chun, Thompson, and Martinez, the soldiers who hadn't made it home. But that wasn't the moment that changed everything. The moment came later, at the reception, when a young Army private approached him. Sir, the kid couldn't have been more than 19. I'm shipping out to Afghanistan next month. I wanted to ask, what is it, son? Are you scared? When you're over there, I mean. Jack looked at this young soldier, so eager, so terrified, so brave. He thought about all the lies he could tell, all the heroic platitudes that would sound good in a movie. Instead, he told the truth. Every single day, being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. What makes you a soldier is doing the job anyway. The private nodded solemnly, shook Jack's hand, and walked away a little taller. 6 months later, Jack was back in Portland. But Murphy's bar had been transformed. The walls were covered with photos of local veterans from every conflict since World War II. A small plaque by the door read, "In honor of those who serve. All gave some gave all." Jack sat at the same stool where it all began, nursing the same brand of whiskey, watching the same neon sign flicker outside the window. "You're him, aren't you?" A voice beside him. Jack turned to see an elderly man, maybe 70, with Vietnam veteran baseball cap and knowing eyes. "Depends who you're looking for." "The guy from the news. The Medal of Honor winner." Jack nodded. "Guilty as charged." The old veteran extended his hand. "Tom Chun, 1st Cavalry Division, 1969 to 1970. Jack shook it. "Chun? You related to Corporal Daniel Chun?" The man's eyes went wide. "He was my nephew. My brother's boy." Jack felt his throat tighten. "He was a good soldier. Saved my life twice before. Before he didn't make it home." Tom finished quietly. "I know. His mother got your letter." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. 2 warriors from different wars, united by loss and love and the unbreakable bond of service. "You know what Danny would say if he were here?" Tom asked finally. "What's that?" "He'd say stop carrying us around like stones in your pocket. We didn't die so you could spend the rest of your life feeling guilty." Jack wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "He'd say we died so you could live. Really live. Not just survive, but make it count." Across the bar, Jack noticed a young woman sitting alone, staring into her drink with the 1,000-yard stare he recognized instantly. Military bearing despite civilian clothes. The careful way she sat with her back to the wall. "Excuse me," Jack said to Tom, and walked over. "Mind if I sit down?" She looked up, defensive. "I'm not looking for company." "Neither was I, 6 months ago." Jack said anyway. "Just got back." She studied him for a long moment. "Afghanistan. 2 weeks ago. Rough tour. Aren't they all?" Jack signaled the bartender for 2 whiskeys. "What's your name?" "Lieutenant Sarah Martinez." She paused. "Wait. You're just another vet trying to figure out how to be human again." They talked until closing time. about the war, about coming home, about the weight of command and the price of survival. When the bar closed, Jack gave her his card. There's a group of us that meets Thursday nights. Veterans. Different wars, same struggles. You should come. She took the card reluctantly. I don't really do groups. Neither did I. But sometimes the only people who understand the darkness are the ones who've been there too. Sarah Martinez did show up the following Thursday. So did 12 other veterans from conflicts spanning 50 years. They met in the back room of Murphy's bar, sharing stories and silence in equal measure. Within a year, the group had grown to 30 members. Then 50. Local news ran a story about the hero vet who was helping other veterans transition home. Soon, similar groups were forming in other cities. Jack never intended to become a spokesperson for veterans' issues. But when Hollywood called about making a movie about his story, he had one condition. Any profits would go to veteran support programs. When politicians wanted to use his image for campaign ads, he declined. When defense contractors offered him consulting jobs, he turned them down. Instead, he worked construction during the day and counseled veterans at night. He testified before Congress about PTSD treatment. He spoke at high schools about service and sacrifice. And every Friday night, he sat at the same stool in Murphy's bar, looking at the same photo of his fallen brothers, drinking the same whiskey, and remembering. But now he wasn't alone. 1 year after that night in jail, Jack received a letter. It was from the son of one of the men who'd attacked him in the bar, the boyfriend with the broken nose. Mr. Morrison, it read. My dad told me what happened that night. He was drunk and stupid and said things he didn't mean. But after he saw the news about who you really are, he couldn't stop talking about it. He said he felt like the biggest fool in America. My dad's been sober for 6 months now. Goes to AA meetings 3 times a week. He volunteers at the VA hospital downtown, helping other veterans. He says he's trying to make up for that night. I thought you should know. What you did, not just in the war, but how you handled everything after, it changed him. It changed our whole family. Thank you for being the man you are. Jack folded the letter carefully and put it in his wallet, next to the photo of his fallen soldiers. That evening, at the veterans group meeting, Sarah Martinez stood up to speak. She'd been coming for months, but had never shared her story. I thought I was broken, she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I thought I was the only one who couldn't figure out how to be normal again. She looked around the room at faces that nodded in understanding. But being here, listening to all of you, I realized something. We're not broken. We're just carrying weight that most people can't see. She turned to Jack. And some of us carry it better than others. Some of us figure out how to turn that weight into strength. After the meeting, as Jack was stacking chairs, Tom Chin approached him. You know what you've built here? The old Vietnam vet asked. A support group? A family. These people, they look up to you. They see what you've done with your pain, and it gives them hope. Jack looked around the room at veterans helping each other, sharing stories, healing together. Danny would be proud. Tom continued. All of them would be. You didn't just survive, son. You made it count. 2 years after that night in Murphy's bar, Jack Morrison received another medal. This one wasn't for valor in combat. It was the Presidential Citizens Medal, awarded for exemplary deeds of service for the country or fellow citizens. The ceremony was smaller this time. Just Jack, his parents who'd flown in from Ohio, and the president in the Oval Office. Sergeant Morrison, the president said, your actions in Afghanistan were heroic. But what you've done since coming home, building a network of support for our veterans, changing how America sees and treats those who serve, that's equally heroic. Mr. President, Jack replied, I just did what needed doing. That's exactly what makes you a hero. But Jack knew the truth. He wasn't the hero of this story. The heroes were Rodriguez and Chun and Thompson and Martinez, who gave everything so others could come home. The heroes were veterans like Sarah Martinez, who fought their demons every day and slowly, painfully, courageously rebuilt their lives. The heroes were families like the Chin family, who turned their grief into strength and their loss into love. The heroes were even broken men like the drunk in the bar, who found the courage to admit they were wrong and the strength to change. Jack Morrison had just been the catalyst, the spark that lit a fire that was already waiting to burn. That night, back in Portland, Jack sat at his usual stool in Murphy's bar. The Friday night veterans meeting had grown so large they'd had to move to the community center down the street. On the wall above his head, Next to the photos of local veterans, hung a simple plaque with a quote from his Medal of Honor citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. But underneath, someone had added another line in smaller text. And for showing us that heroes don't just win wars. They win hearts. Jack raised his glass in a silent toast to the photo of his fallen brothers, to the veterans fighting their own battles at home, to second chances and second acts, and the possibility of redemption. Outside, snow began to fall, covering Portland in quiet white. Inside Murphy's bar, a Medal of Honor winner sat alone, but not lonely, scarred but not broken, carrying the weight of the fallen and the hope of the living. And in the gentle clink of ice against glass, in the soft hiss of beer being poured, in the low murmur of conversations between strangers becoming friends, you could hear something beautiful. You could hear the sound of healing. If you believe that heroes walk among us every day, if you believe that service to others is the highest calling, if you believe that even the broken can be made whole again, then honor those who serve. Honor those who've fallen. Honor those who carry on. Because in the end, we're all just walking each other home. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we find that home was inside us all along.